that feedback, we iterate upon it, and then we implement things in the game. And specifically in this presentation, I'm going to talk about very specific features and pieces of the game that were very directly, we want this, or we like this, or we want to be able to do a certain thing, and we executed that exact thing based on that feedback. So, and what I wanted to illustrate was sometimes that happened very obviously, and sometimes very quickly. Sometimes it was more organic and slowly. So, and it happened not, and this wasn't something that happened later or just recently. This happened literally from the very beginning, from release 1. So, jumping and swimming. So,
we don't need
the very first release, and as again, we're a crowd-funded game, and we try to keep everything under scope, to maximize how much it costs to make things. So, making a world that you can jump and you can swim is more expensive than making one that you can't. So we were going to control costs, and we were going to make it so you couldn't jump and you couldn't swim. And so that was the original scope of the game. And that's what release, so when you played in release 1 of the game that came out December of 2013, you couldn't jump and you couldn't swim. And we felt like this was kind of a necessary evil based on the money we had, and we hated it. But again, we felt like this was kind of a necessary evil, like based on what we had, what we could do, how much time we had, how much money we had. I mean, it was terribly non-immersive. I mean, you could run up the steps. You'd be at the edge of a platform, and then you'd stand at the edge of this platform that was literally like, this high. And then to get off that platform, you had to walk back over to these steps. You literally could not just step off the platform. So it wasn't even a matter of, like, when we said there was no jumping, it wasn't just that you couldn't jump up in the air. It's like you couldn't walk off ledges, right? You couldn't fall. There was no falling either, right? So, we hated it, but we put it out. We thought it was a necessary evil, and we kind of thought, well, let's see what the players think if they hate it as much as we did. Turns out you guys hated it even more than we hated it. A lot more than we hated it. And so we pivoted immediately. I mean, like literally within days we had put jumping and swimming into the game after release 1. So the very next release, release 2, we had jumping and swimming in the game. And what that hopefully showed you guys and showed and proved to ourselves too was that we, from the very beginning, we had this feedback with you guys, that you guys were going to be able to give us feedback about what you liked and didn't like, and we were going to be able to act upon it, not just sometime in the future, but literally immediately, and that you guys were going to be able to change the course of the product in real time to make the product that not just, and the reason I make a point about saying we hated it too was, I made a point yesterday about staying on target too. It's debatable whether we would have made the change if we didn't agree with you guys, right? If now the level that you guys hated it, we probably would have made the change anyway. But it was important that we felt the same way, right? That we playing the game and us being immersed in the world, we felt that break in immersion of standing on the edge of that platform and going, oh God, why can't I just step off, right? And so that agreement that we had with you guys of that's how important it was for us to not just change it sometime later, but to change it immediately. And the other reason we had to change it immediately is because every single scene that was being built, we knew that if we didn't change this now, we were going to have to go rebuild every single scene later. And so this was a change that had to happen now or never. and so that was kind of the first example of, hey, here's a feature that the community wanted. We can do that. Let's do it now, and we did it. So that was kind of the first kind of example.
Later, which made other things move out later.
Yeah, it did have a cascade.
Total schedule.
Yeah, and so by the way, this made every single scene we built take probably about 30% longer to build, because we had to account for the fact that people could swim in them, people could jump around in them, people.
Over the mountains potentially.
Yeah,
So that's a no to flying, right?
Yeah, so no to flying.
No to flying.
Yeah.
What about climbing out of the water?
That is
What?
still a little trouble. Slippery banks.
Like every single place, every guy was supposed to access when you just can't.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I'm still not understanding the question.
Well, I mean, like to not walk off of something, but you need extra hitbox on the edge to say you can't go past this point, as opposed to if you do allow jumping, then you don't need to have hitbox for it.
Well, no, I mean, the way it worked is like you literally, that animation and that whole ability literally didn't exist. Your feet were nailed to the ground, so you're like, there was no box to define where you couldn't go. It's like literally your feet were always, your feet were literally connected to the terrain at all times. So your feet always had to be on a horizontal surface, and so we didn't have to go when there was in the era of no jumping, which was one release. There was no jumping boxes in the world, because that we didn't need that, because your feet were always connected to a horizontal surface.
Stairway's just a ramp.
A ramp. They were a ramp.
Yeah, they were just
You
a
could
ramp.
actually visualize it. You could actually turn on a key and see this purple, smooth surface, which was the ice skating rink of the world.
Yeah.
And there was a gap in that, like a vertical break or a horizontal break, like a river. You just couldn't pass it.
Yeah.
And it was way simpler,
Yeah.
but
It's funny how in like a 2D game, like, it's not a problem. You're like, oh yeah, 2D world, yeah, great.
Right.
You don't even really think about jumping, but when you see it in real life, you're like,
right. Well, in fact, sorry to interrupt your
Yeah, no, go.
the presentation here on slide 1, and even I don't know what it has on any of those slides. But to that end,
This one's only has 7, not 22. So. Yeah.
but there's an adage that also comes to play in here, which is it's actually really hard to write down something on paper that does not exist in a game yet, and write it down and think in your mind's eye, this will be fun if we implement this. The probability of that being true when you implement it is, definitely less than 100%, hopefully greater than 0%. But you really don't know until you get there. And so it's one of the fundamental difficulties of predicting game development is, you won't know till you get there if you've achieved the goal of fun. If you don't have the goal of fun, there's no point in stopping. You have to iterate again. And then you might iterate again and again and again. And it's interesting that literally from day one, we could not have chosen this path to correct this had not only the Kickstarter gone well, but the months after Kickstarter, we were already continuing to raise money. We had a rate, a flow of ongoing support we could sort of predict. We could sort of feel like it was okay to even consider this, because if the Kickstarter was it and that was the end of the money, I assure you we would have done nothing of this kind, much less nothing of anything more that you're coming up here. We would have stopped. And so, like we were talking about over lunch about how long this game has taken, which is obviously a lot longer than originally proposed. Well, this is why. It's because we've chosen to not ship the minimum viable product, but instead ship the correct product.
Yeah, and so a good point, as far as Richard jumping in right there, and you guys, I meant to make this before. This is meant to be a discussion, so I've got slides, but feel free to jump in, ask questions, have conversations. Unlike yesterday where I had 22 slides, I only made 7 this time. So I curbed my producer-ness this time and just kept it simple. The next thing I want to talk about is player-owned towns. We always, we were going to have player housing always. So that was always in the plans. from the moment of the Kickstarter. Player-owned towns was not something we were originally going to have. It happened organically, and it and it over time has gotten its life of its own and way more successful than we could have ever imagined. And and we talked a little bit about this yesterday. Um, it goes all the way back to Ultima Online and Pax Layer, and where players got together and formed a town, and we had observed that and observed it happening again in Shroud, where we had built towns in Shroud that were not part of the main storyline, that were just meant that really were just open spaces where players could have housing, but they didn't have any NPCs in them. They didn't have a story in them. There were no services of any kind. Wasn't a bank. There were no NPC shops or anything like that. It was really meant for the players to build and facilitate all of that themselves. But all the lots in the town were defined, and we scattered a few of these around the game, and we named them. Like the first one was Whole Trot, which was a variation on one of our developers' name, who was Rick Holtrop. So it was a variation on his name, and that's where Winfield and his crew started a version of Pax Lair, and we watched what those guys were doing there, and realized that with the housing system that we had built and the power of what they were doing with the community, how close we were to something really powerful, and for the community, and also from a monetary standpoint, full transparency with you guys, of course, is that it could be a really powerful fundraising tool for us. But at that point, even then, we were thinking there's maybe going to be 30 people who would be interested in running their own town and doing this kind of community-driven effort. So, and again, we were at this point we were thinking this is the first round iteration of this was we were thinking we'll just build it like we build every other map. So it'll be a custom static scene. We'll lay it out just like we do any other scene. So we'll lay down all the lots. We'll put the shops down just like we build any other city, which in general takes us 2 to 3 weeks to build a scene in general, depending on the size and the complexity. And some take longer than that if they're really elaborate, but in general, And so that was kind of, and again, we were thinking there's going to be maybe 30 people interested, and so we priced them in 2020 hindsight probably 10 times cheaper than we should have, and grossly underestimated the popularity of them. And so we launched them, and it turns out lots of people were interested in this. To date, we no longer sell them, but the in total was 330 of them. So
10 times.
yeah, more than 10 times what we originally. Yeah.
How many of those are currently very inactive?
Approximately 200.
Yeah. So
I assume that's why the dynamic town icon is being implemented, so you know if they're active or not.
right, and so right now, well, it's just like do a little segue right now. So we have 67,000 people who've given us money to play the game, right? But only about 10,000 people have ever played the game, right? So we've got 57,000 people who could play the game who haven't, and same with people who bought towns. We've got a couple of hundred people who bought towns so most people are waiting for us to be done, right? They don't want to play the game while it's being built still, and that's fine, you know. And again, that's why we were talking about yesterday too. Is like why we also don't want to do a major push of any kind of marketing to pull in like large numbers of people, because while there's most people don't want to, can't handle being part of a game while it's being built, and so that's while there's a huge number of people that are interested, there's a much smaller number of people who are interested in playing with their town right now. Now, the problem with that being that for now, the people who are playing, who are interested, have no indication of what towns are being actively used, because a lot of the towns have been implemented and put in the game, but no one's in there because the town has been implemented, but the owner hasn't put down markers, hasn't built out the town, and so people wander into the town like, holy, there's nothing in here. And then we also have the same problem with PRTs that no one's settled in, and so we're working this release on the dynamic population indicators. So towns will now display the actual icon on the map is going to change based on how many people are actually living in that town. So it's gonna. So if basically if no one has claimed a lot in that town, it's just going to basically show a foundation, and then the more people that have claimed lots in that game, it'll to get it to look like it currently looks, you have to basically have a fully settled town.
So we're going to notice a lot of shrinking of towns.
Yeah, so the map is going to go from what it looks like now to a lot of foundations on the map. So it's
Some cement slabs. Or
Yeah.
something.
About ruined.
What's the comparison?
Yeah.
What's the comparison between a 21-person village that's completely full and a metropolis that has
Is that a hamlet?
50 out of?
it's going to be a relative percentage. So we're not this first iteration. We're not going to delineate between the size of the POT and the icon. They're still going to look the same like they look now.
Maybe you went with the metro because you want to have higher decoration limits, but it's going to look like only a quarter of a town because you have 21,000 square foot lots.
Yeah, well, but that was your choice, so you're going to look like you're partially settled. So it's going to be, yeah. So.
Have you ever considered like dynamic slotting on towns that aren't settled? Like bandits have taken over.
That is on the backlog. It'll be, but it's not going to be. It's mainly going to be resources and wildlife. It's not probably going to be NPCs. At least that's not in the current design.
When you say wildlife, so you're talking about like animals.
Yeah, but not.
Which are AI, but not.
But it's not really going to be
Humanoid
humanoids. Yeah.
That still
I
works.
think you were
It's
next.
better
Yeah.
than-
Came up at lunch today, somebody asked, how many people opted for the custom static over dynamic? You know that number?
I'm trying to remember the current number off the top of my head. I don't remember the exact number, and so if I gave you a number, it would be wrong.
Is it like 50-50? Can you explain it?
Yeah, so a custom static town is a town that, again, we build just like we build a traditional map. And so we as developers go in and lay everything out. We pre-place all the markers. So the town works like Brittany, right, or Owl's Head. So all of the lot markers are pre-placed. We pre-distribute, like, this is how many village lots there are, this is how many row lots, this is how many city lots, etc. The shops are pre-placed, etc. It still uses all the same templates. We'll do some customization of the template based on, as long as it fits within that sort of 2-week window. But it's still using the template like that everyone else uses from. But the difference being in but it's static, and the reason we use the word static is that you can't change any of that. Like, again, just like you can't change anything in Owl's Head, like the distribution of lots and the placement of the buildings, none of that can be changed ever without you paying a change fee to us to change those things. Whereas in a dynamic town, the town owner can change anything at any time. Like any of the lots can be moved, placed, changed, reoriented. Any of the buildings can be moved around, changed, etc.
Not just the lots, but the extra deco we put in the dynamic.
Yeah.
Design, whatever we did.
Anything.
Which
Yeah.
honestly makes a lot more sense, because in Paxler, our story comes from the Paxler ruins. So what we've done with the downtown is take it apart, built all ruins since they come out, thank you, and burnt out houses. And just face them with walls, and we will RP our way through rebuilding our downtown. Like, you'll never get a chance to do that kind of stuff with a static town.
The lawnmower tool, how much would we shape our
Well, the lawnmower is only going to be able to clear foliage,
trees?
and grass and bushes. It's not going to change terrain.
So the pavers we have out now to block out like a town square,
I mean,
they still
the lawnmower is basically going to be an invisible paver.
Flat
I
area.
mean, that's
Use it
Free pave.
it won't, but it won't use your deck. It won't use a deco.
And can you put things over it?
Yes.
So if I can actually give a direct, two examples to the dynamic versus static. Started as a static account, and it had an Oracle vertical there that they built that I thought was awesome. And when they released dynamic towns, the very next release, the comment of we have dynamic towns are in, Paxler went, woohoo, we're there. And I went, oh, my Oracle converted, right? Oh, my two ruined castles that have 4 village lots inside them instead of a castle. I don't know if I want to convert them to dynamic. And my R20, I went, oh, I got to go dynamic. The whole game is going to be organically growing and changing about it. So those types of structures, you can get a little bit more of a tweak to exactly what you want with static, but then you're stuck and you're done. And it costs you money to make any change to it. Where with dynamic, you get that constant, I wake up any day and I just decide I want to have my walls become ruins. Great, I take a wall down and I throw up a couple of rubble rocks and I've got somebody sieges my town. You know, so,
Truth be told, with Paxler, what we did was we worked very hard on the design of those with Winfield. And when we went and put it in, and we had the discussions about dynamic towns, we went, well, we went this far with you guys doing it. Why not help them test out dynamic towns? But I have to say, the next day when we walked in and everything was white, my heart went down to here. I was like, do the right thing here, you know? But ultimately, yes, it's absolutely the right thing.
I mean, there's still, I would say there's probably somewhere in the 30 to 40 people, Laz, that are still one static towns. I mean, and there's for a variety of reasons. Some people literally just don't want to do the work themselves. Like they just kind of don't want to do it. Which, you know, I mean, there might be an opportunity there though for other players to offer to do services and charge money to do that, right? So hint hint. So there might be a business opportunity there. Some folks are holding out hope that even though we've been hopefully crystal clear that we're building off templates, that there's going to be a higher level of customization than we've said, and that they're going to get something unique out of it. What I've been trying to do is whenever I see people going for static, I try to have conversations with them about why and what specifically they're looking for, and is there a way that we can build a template that will satisfy them, that we can then make part of the template list for dynamic. And sometimes it is what I consider the silly, not silliest, but the most obscure detail that would put them in static, which I'm like, really? Like the latest one. And so the whole reason one of the latest set of templates that they're the stone dock variations was there was a set of town owners that's why they were going static, was because it was the stone dock. And I'm like, are are you serious? Like, really, just tell me that, and I will. I mean, because that was an easy variation for us to add into the template list. Like we'll just make a stone dock variation of all the templates, and then he's like, oh, okay. And he, like that person, I found out, I uncovered a whole scheme that was going on among town owners that were going to go static to get that customization in the template, and then flip back over to dynamic with that customization in place. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works, But anyway, yeah, Roper.
One of the questions that several of my guild members have been curious about is, in any kind of immediate future, are we going to be able to see town owners when they have placed lots have some sort of default housing of that size type like we saw during the land rush in the NBC towns? A lot of these towns look very empty. They've got all these lot markers down, but trying to design these towns around without having 50, 60 lot deeds by a whole bunch of people, and imagine the whole cost that would be for a couple people trying to just design them and have people come in and see these towns. This is what it's going to look like once we have enough people to build these towns. Question one. And then question two is, one of the things that two of our town owners have requested, a few times is, can we get a completely flat map, like a true plains map where the entire thing is green, maybe put a river in it, it doesn't matter, but they want to be able to create a, true, medieval style, outer wall, inner wall, centralized thing where the maps currently we have, the plains map that we have currently, we have 8 separate little communities that are walled in completely, but we can't make it one big city because you've got the elevation change, these rocks here, which is great, but it just one is just plain grass, just flat, all flat.
So that was a whole bunch of questions. So just a point of procedure, it would be great to let me answer one question and then move on to another question, just because it's hard to remember all the questions. But so the first question was what? The default houses?
Yeah.
So that there's a possibility we could do that. There's another way you can do that, which is what I did in Hometown, which I know that a lot of people, especially early backers like yourselves, have a huge inventory of houses. What I did with Hometown was, I went and pre-placed a bunch of houses, and then my team members go back behind me, unclaim those lots, and then put the house they want. So I mean, it's a lot. Oh, it's the deed issue, right?
It's like road deeds come with the default.
Oh, yeah, that's the problem. Okay, so here's the problem. Well, yeah, maybe. I mean, so that it's a possible. I mean, it's a doing that tech wouldn't be not a priority but yes, it's possible. It's just there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's way higher priority in the queue. So
would it be
like
different
things like the lawnmower and renting and things like that. So yeah, we could do that, but it would push other things behind it in the queue. So at some point in the future, sure, but it's just there's things that are way higher priority than that.
So you're talking about a default house, like we do for row houses now, and a default house for any size.
Yeah.
And then all of your village lots and places that have trees growing through the village lot, people have.
Yeah, I mean it's not a non-trivial task, and so
But
yes,
the NPC towns have default
that were placed by hand by the designer who built the map. There's no tech for that.
Okay, but if you claim it, it goes away. You put your own down. You unclaim it, the default pops back up.
But again, those are part of. So the way that works is that's baked into the static mesh of the scene, and so player towns are not. That's not a static mesh. Everything's dynamic in the scene. So we'd have to create new tech that would dynamically undo that.
So it's unlike the
Instead of creating tech, why can't you instead rebuild the graphic of the marker to instead of having me, because I know you guys already have an invisible layer for the marker, because I use them to clear out large areas of land. When I'm trying to see what I can decorate on, I pull out a city or a Duke lot, and I'll go around my town, drop it, turn it, drop it, turn it, drop it, turn it, drop it, boom, I've got a big open space. And now I can see what I have to work with. So you guys actually, I know that there's an invisible space that covers that entire thing. So if you just modify that invisible space to be the house, it'll do the exact same thing it does in the towns. Because now that's
But then it's going to be in your way when you're using the marker to be played. So
Okay.
I mean, it's going to be like.
It's really harder to see what's going on for placing the marker because you can't see the other side of it.
So then I'd have to make tech that says, okay, don't show it while I'm placing, and then turn it on when it's not placed. I mean, yeah, again, it's totally doable, and we can get in the queue. It's just like there's a huge list of other stuff that we would want to do for pots
Yeah.
from the tool set. But I mean, I get the problem. It's just
I know my guild, and I don't want to speak for
Sure.
anyone else, but our guild would much rather have that option than a mower option.
right. I'm just using the mower as an example, but there's a.
Mow our lawns with our papers anyway.
Yeah, but that eats up your deco lid. But mower is just an example. But there's a huge, and optimizations is another thing. So like, I'd much rather get optimizations and raise deco limits than do it. But it's a good suggestion. We'll get it in the backlog. So, and then what was the other question? I'm sorry.
Flatland.
Flat.
Completely flat map where we can actually build a true city out of it, because right now, the best we've done is separate individual communities.
So we do have in the backlog what we call an urban template that's meant to be for a city. So that's coming. So that's meant to be a basically mainly flat for a city. That's kind of like a more like made for building cities, like paved, kind of like think of a flatter and a few variations. Like a coastal one, and one that's kind of like an owl's head with two levels, like an upper and a lower level, but all very, very flat. So, but there's no way you're going to convince Hutch to give you an entirely flat scene, because you don't understand how ugly that would look. I mean, it would look really, 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 really bad. Like, I mean, it would think parts. I mean, you can make it most 90% flat, but if it's really truly all flat, it looks really bad. I mean, it looks like a mistake. It looks like an error. I mean, it looks like something like that we didn't finish.
Well, we used to play with that in the backside of Darkstarr's template, because we let them back over. We allowed us to place markers back there. We actually designed a whole site back there.
Yeah,
Hoping for something flat similar to that in the future.
yeah. That's
Sounds
not
like
gonna
you're getting
happen.
something close.
But it's going to be close.